Welcome to an interesting episode from Rich Insider. 450 million citizens are eligible to vote in the upcoming EU elections this year, and more than 8 in 10 Europeans believe voting is even more important given the current geopolitical situation. In this episode, we will discuss the impacts of the European Union election, not just in Europe, but across the world. The EU's economic power also makes it an influential player in US strategy toward China, as Europe navigates questions of economic security and interdependence.
Nobody in this hemicycle can doubt that a people that stands up so bravely for our European values belongs in our European family.
The President of the European Commission is a powerful figure, responsible for setting the EU's political agenda, proposing new legislation and leading the executive branch of the Union. But how is this crucial leader chosen, and what implications should the world expect? Come, let's find out together. The 2024 Eurobarometer survey shows that 71% of Europeans would be likely to vote in the coming election next week. As the European Union charts its course for the future, several critical issues dominate the political agenda. These challenges require innovative solutions, bold leadership, and a shared commitment to European values. Europe's defense and security, along with climate change, stands some of the most pressing issues of our time, and the EU has emerged as a global leader in tackling this existential threat. The European Green Deal, a comprehensive plan to transform the EU into a climate-neutral continent by 2050, is proof to this commitment. Economic reform remains another priority. However, the EU faces the challenge of fostering sustainable and inclusive growth, creating jobs and ensuring prosperity for all citizens. This requires addressing issues such as high unemployment in some member states, tackling inequality, and promoting innovation and competitiveness. The digital revolution presents both opportunities and challenges for Europe. The EU recognizes the need to harness the potential of new technologies while addressing concerns related to data privacy, cybersecurity, and the impact of automation on the workforce. On top of all this, securing EU's borders and migration are some of the most spoken matters of concern across the region.
We need to secure the external border, utilize the external dimension to prevent and disincentivize illegal migration, relocate the entire asylum system to third country reception centers. Madam President, dear colleagues, Europe's future is at stake.
All right, folks, there are a lot of significant matters at stake for this year's election in the EU. These elections will decide who calls the shots on everything from climate change to your data privacy. This year's European Union elections, which are set to start on the 9th of June, will determine the direction of the EU for the next 5 years. Now, some of you might be thinking, but John, I don't even live in Europe. Why should I care? Because the EU is a global player and has massive economic power and political influence on the world stage. Its decisions on trade, climate change, and tech regulation have ripple effects across the world. The EU passes laws and regulations for data, privacy, cybersecurity, and AI, which can significantly impact American businesses. For example, the European Commission had fined Google €2.42 billion for breaching EU antitrust rules, which is argued as the biggest fine in recent years. 2024's elections are particularly important because the stakes are higher than ever. With the rise of populism, climate change, far-right sentiments, and a shaky global economy, the EU needs strong leadership which is committed towards innovation and growth. By casting your vote, you have the power to shape the future of Europe and beyond. But how does it work in reality? The EU Parliament is the only directly elected institution of the European Union and has 705 members from 27 different countries, all arguing in 24 different languages. These members of the Parliament, also known as MEPs, debate and pass laws that affect every aspect of our lives. They scrutinize the European Commission and shape the EU's budget. Knowing how the EU works is the first step in realizing the power you hold as a European citizen. Now, let's dive into the wild world of EU politics. The European Parliament is a melting pot of political parties, ranging from the far left to the far right. You've got your centre-right European People's Party, i.e. EPP, with 177 MEPs, known for their pro-business stance. Then there's the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats, also called S&D, with 143 MEPs championing social justice and workers' rights. The party with the third highest number of MEPs is called Renew Europe, with 101 MEPs. The Greens focus on climate change and sustainable development and hold 72 MEPs. They are also known as the European Free Alliance Group. And the Eurosceptic groups, like the Identity and Democracy or ID Group, want more power returned to individual member states. Coalition building is an essential part of the political game in the European Parliament. Because no single group typically holds a majority of seats, they must work together to form alliances, negotiate compromises, and build consensus in order to pass legislation and advance their shared goals. This eventually shapes the political and economic direction of the EU. This year's EU elections aren't just about abstract political ideologies, they're about tackling some of the most pressing issues. We're talking about increasing the defense budgets, trade relations, climate change, fair wages to EU citizens, improving economic inequality, and the future of Europe. Being member states of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, i.e. NATO, the United States and the European Union, are deeply interconnected in areas of defense and security. Having members of the EU who are committed to investing in their national defenses to strengthen the alliance is highly relevant to the United States' own security and defense posture, especially to compete with Russia. The European Union is the world's largest single market and free trade, and also the United States' most important commercial partner. However, the EU is also looking for options on the other side of the pond, with France and Germany keen to start trade relations with China. The EU has been a global leader in the fight against climate change. The Green Deal, a plan to make Europe climate neutral by 2050, is a hot topic of debate. Will the EU take bold action to reduce emissions and invest in renewable energy? The EU has faced economic challenges, from the Eurozone crisis to the COVID-19 pandemic. These elections will decide how the EU recovers and builds a more resilient economy. Will they prioritize austerity measures or invest in public services? And let's not forget about other crucial issues like migration, digital privacy, and the rule of law. The EU has a chance to be a beacon of hope, but only if they make the right choices. Hold on to your hats, folks, because things are about to get juicy. We're talking about the race to become the next president of the European Commission. The president of the European Commission isn't directly elected by the people. Following the elections, the European Council, comprising the heads of state or government of all EU member states, proposes a candidate for Commission President, taking into account the results of the elections. This is where the European Parliament comes in. The proposed candidate must secure the support of a majority of members of the European Parliament in a secret ballot. If the candidate fails to secure a majority, the European Council must propose a new candidate within a month. The President's political affiliation and policy priorities are therefore heavily influenced by the outcome of the European Parliament elections. If the centre-right EPP wins the most seats, they'll likely push for a candidate from their own ranks, which is most likely the incumbent President Ursula von der Leyen. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said she is willing to work with MEPs from Giorgia Meloni's far-right Brothers of Italy party after the EU election in June, arguing it's needed to keep the bloc on a pro-European course. Pressed on Meloni's rollback of LGBTQI rights, von der Leyen said she had a complete different approach, but argued that Europe would be weaker without Meloni's support. She also suggested that the Greens are not a reliable partner when it comes to key votes, although the French president in his recent speech at Strasbourg warned that Europe is mortal. He had no explicit attack on Ursula von der Leyen. Having said that, Macron's support to Ursula doesn't seem committed, as he highlights the need for massive strategic decision-making and leadership changes in the EU. But some argue that if the left-leaning S&D or the Greens make significant gains, they could demand a more progressive candidate. Now let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. The EU's decisions have ripple effects that reach every corner of the globe. The EU is a global economic powerhouse, and its trade policies impact several developing countries. By supporting parties that advocate for fair trade practices, you're helping to create a more just global trading system. The EU is also a major player in international climate negotiations. By voting for parties committed to ambitious climate action, you're giving the EU a stronger voice on the global stage. And let's not forget about the EU's role in promoting democracy and human rights around the world. By supporting parties that champion these values, you're helping to make the EU a stronger advocate for freedom and equality. The EU's decisions have global consequences. Your vote is a vote for the kind of world you want to see. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care.